Okay, picture this. You've got a decades-long friendship. You've survived wars, shared inside jokes, and even helped each other move. But lately, the group chat is crickets. One side keeps forgetting to Venmo their share of the bill, while the other passive-aggressively posts memes about loyalty. That is the US and Europe in 2025. Once the ultimate power duo, they are now sniping over trade deals, ghosting each other on Ukraine strategy, and subtweeting about NATO budgets. Is this just a rough patch? Or are we witnessing a messy breakup for the history books? Let's unpack the drama, the history, and why your morning latte might get pricier because of it. Let's start at the very beginning. Before Trump tariffs and NATO squabbles, there was Columbus, sailing the ocean blue, accidentally discovering a continent already home to millions. Fast forward a few centuries and Europe's colonial empires turned the Americas into a patchwork of French fur traders, Spanish missions, and British tea enthusiasts. Those early ties, exploitation, sure, but also cultural exchange, laid the groundwork for what became a transatlantic bromance. By the 20th century, the US and Europe were trauma bonding through two world wars. In 1917, America finally ditched its neutrality facade to help Britain and France take down the Kaiser. Then came World War II, Hitler's Blitzkrieg, Pearl Harbor, and FDR's Lend-Lease program. D-Day in 1944 wasn't just a military operation, it was America saying, "We've got you." Post-war, the US didn't just rebuild Europe with the Marshall Plan's $13 billion. It became Europe's hype man, cheering on the EU's early days like a proud parent. The Soviet Union, the ultimate third wheel. NATO, born in 1949, was the US and Europe's way of saying, "Till death or nukes do us part." The Berlin airlift, a bouquet of candy-dropping planes to stick it to Stalin. For 40 years, the alliance was rock solid. Well, until the Berlin Wall fell and everyone forgot why they needed joint therapy. Trump's 2024 comeback wasn't just a political plot twist. It was a jump scare for Europe. His opening move? Threatening to slap a 20% tax on every European import, from Italian Parmesan to German Porsches. The re-election of Donald Trump has signaled a crack in the alliance, with threats of tariffs, pulling out US troops, and possibly exiting NATO if Europe doesn't pay its fair share. These actions reflect a broader shift in US foreign policy, prioritizing unilateralism and economic nationalism over multilateral cooperation. The US and EU trade over $1.3 trillion in goods annually, but Trump sees that figure as a scoreboard, and America is losing. In 2018, he hit European steel with 25% tariffs. Now, analysts warn a 20% auto tariff could cost Europe 180,000 jobs, mostly in Germany's industrial heartland. Meanwhile, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen isn't blinking. "We'll tax your bourbon, and your jeans, and maybe your Netflix subscriptions," he says. Trump's obsession with defense spending, the 2% GDP rule, has turned alliance meetings into a recurring nightmare. In 2024, only 11 of NATO's 32 members hit the target. Trump's response? Either pay up or we're out. Cue panic in Poland, Estonia, and every Baltic state. Behind closed doors, EU diplomats are whispering about a plan B, a Euro army funded by a €100 billion slush fund. Spoiler alert, it's moving slower than a DMV line. Nothing exposes the rift like Ukraine. Europe wants Putin contained like yesterday, but Trump, he's called the invasion genius and hinted he'd cut a deal recognizing Crimea as Russian. For Eastern Europe, That's like watching your bodyguard hand the burglars your keys. Europe's response to Trump's chaos? A mix of panic and pride. French President Emmanuel Macron has been ranting about strategic autonomy since 2019. Essentially, Europe learning to adult without Uncle Sam. The EU's rolled out an €8 billion defense fund and plans for a 5,000 soldier rapid response force. But let's be real here. Europe's military have the coordination of a toddler's soccer team. Germany's army recently reported only 30% of its tanks are battle ready. And then there is climate policy. Europe is racing towards net zero, banning gas cars by 2035 and taxing carbon-heavy imports. Meanwhile, Trump's drilling, baby. Drilling. Rolling back green regulations and mocking Greta Thunberg. The disconnect isn't just ideological, it's economic. European companies face carbon taxes. US firms get subsidies. Desperate times, desperate measures. With America flaking, Europe is cozying up to China. Well, sort of. Germany is doubling down on Beijing car markets, while France is playing both sides. But China's authoritarian vibe clashes with Europe's value-based branding. Scenario 1. The conscious uncoupling. Europe grows a spine, invests in defense, and the US stops playing global cop. NATO's 2% target is met, and Europe handles Ukraine. Trade wars cool into a truce. Far-fetched? Maybe. Scenario 2. The toxic split. Trade wars escalate, Trump ditches NATO, and Europe's half-baked army collapses under Putin's pressure. China swoops in to fund Hungary's railroads and Greece's ports. Global security? Maybe a free-for-all. Scenario 3. The on-again, off-again circle. Most likely, a messy limbo. The US and Europe keep bickering but patch things up during crisis. Europe talks big on autonomy but still calls Washington during midnight panic attacks. The United States and Europe are stuck with each other. Shared history? Check. Mutual economic dependence? Absolutely. But love isn't enough. This relationship needs work. Less ego, more compromise, and maybe a couples therapist who speaks NATOese. For ordinary folks, the stakes are brutal. A trade war means pricier cars, pricier cheese, and pricier vacations. A NATO collapse could redraw the map of Europe again. The question is, will the United States and Europe grow up and fix this, or let petty squabbles torch 80 years of teamwork?